So thank you everyone for joining this CircularChem webinar series event. I know it's been a really busy season of the year, and thank you very much for taking your time to be part of these really important conversations. So we have the online session today, but we are trying to record the discussion and make it available online later on. So the topic of today is about the ED&I, the equality, diversity, and inclusion perspectives of the future of the chemical industry. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Professor Jin Xuan. I'm from Surrey University. I'm the director of the UKI Circular Economy Centre for Chemicals, where we organize this important event. And why we feel it is important, because I personally believe, and my team believe, any inclusive solution has to be delivered by the inclusive team. So that's why we put ED&I in the heart of everything we do. We operate a center trying to maximize opportunity for everyone, but we also want to make our research to be embedded in the wider perspective of ED&I in terms of the whole chemical society, community, and the wider society. That's why we are having this debate or panel discussion today to see where are the challenges and opportunities of the future of the chemical industry and the chemical community, with bear in mind the ED&I perspective in terms of sustainability development. So we have a fantastic lineup of panel chair and panel members. So I will later on hand over to them very quickly. But before that, I just want to introduce the panel chair today, Professor Raffaella Ocone. Raffaella, thank you very much for your time to be part of this event and to lead the discussion. For those of you who don't know Raffaella, she's a professor of chemical engineering at Heriot-Watt University. And actually, she was the first female professor of chemical engineering in Scotland and probably in the UK. That kind of ideally positioned her to be leading this important discussion. And her research area is in the field of modeling of complex reactive systems. But apart from her own research, she takes a really wide community leadership in a number of areas, such as public engagement, ethics, teaching of ethics, but also the wider ED&I leadership. So she's always so kind in kind of encouraging early career researchers, people with different backgrounds, and I personally benefited quite a lot from the interaction with her and informal mentorship, dare I say. So so without further ado, Raffaella, I will just hand over to you to start this really interesting conversation.
Thank you, Jean, and for the very kind introduction, and thanks to everybody who is now here today. It's lunchtime, and I really appreciate you being here with us and listening to a panel of experts, which is absolutely outstanding. And I'm really looking forward. And, you know, being the chair, actually, I'm in a quite relaxed position because I can ask just the questions, and the panel will answer all the questions I know. So without any further ado, I want just to say that I'm really extremely pleased, and thank you again, Jim, for the opportunity. But I would like to introduce the panel, and actually I would like the panel to introduce themselves, taking no more than 3 minutes, but give us your background and a little bit of perspective of why you are interested. Well, everybody should be really interested in ED&I, but why you personally are interested in this area. So can I start around, I would say around the table, but I would, around my screen in the way I see you. So the first that I see is Sheena. Sheena, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, excuse me. Afternoon, everyone. My name is Sheena Hindocha. I work at Innovate UK KTN, which is a public organisation which supports businesses, academics and public bodies connect to each other and to funding across the UK. I work in the chemistry and industrial biotechnology team there with a focus on all sorts of net zero related chemistry challenges. So batteries, hydrogen, sustainable aviation fuels, and I'm also chair of the NICER Centre's Strategic Advisory Board. So Really glad to be here today. Thank you for inviting me on to be on the panel. I think ED&I is a really key topic, and sometimes we don't connect to it necessarily. These equality, diversity, inclusion, they're words that we talk about a lot sometimes, but actually we need to understand what we can do and how we connect to it individually and how we can make an impact. There's also a bigger picture around ED&I, how the chemical sector can play a role, the challenges that are associated with it, and actually how can we make a difference globally in both moving to a net zero world, but in a fair and just way with inclusion at the heart of that. Yes, so thank you for inviting me to be on the panel. I'm really looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Sheena. Ify.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Ifeyinwa Kanu. I'm the founder and CEO of IntelliDigest. At IntelliDigest, we focus on food system sustainability. A key area that's very much related to the topic today is around how we can recover bionutrients for food production, as well as reducing the impact of use of pesticides and fertilizers and other chemical products in food production, and even when we use them, how we can make it a lot efficient. So in terms of ED&I, one of the key things in my organization that we focus on is more on creating a culture where everyone feel engaged and empowered and feel a sense of ownership for what they do. So I know for sure that people are central to changes and enabling changes to happen in the future. So if we are going to ensure that we have a net zero chemical industry, then really engaging with people, whether people who work in the chemical sector or who are part of the supply chain, is very important, and how we do that in such a way that everyone feel involved and engaged with it is very vital. So those are things I'm hoping that will come out from the conversations today, and thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this conversation.
Thank you, Ify. And the last but not least, Paul.
Oh, hi everyone, I'm Paul Sheerin from Scottish Engineering. Scottish Engineering is a membership organisation for the manufacturing engineering industry in Scotland. So I suppose, that gives away I'm not, the sort of world's expert on the chemical industry. However, my interest and kind of overlap for that is I think the topic you've got today is one that's repeated across almost every industry. I thought about that in context is, you come from a place where the industry has driven sustainable development and high quality of life for people. Is true, and it's the same across many industries, including the ones I know probably a little better in engineering and manufacturing. But at the same time, you've also been a primary contributor to climate change, and contributor to pollution and waste streams. And so squaring all those kind of circles gives you the challenges. It's, it highlights, we're in some ways in our industries, we've been locked into the way we started doing things. We've been locked into existing ways, existing technology, and tied to fossil fuel assets to drive that. And I suppose that just skips nicely to the value of bringing equality, diversity, and inclusion, which is, in order not to go slowly from our starting point and the sort of set of thinking that we have, you need diversity of thought. And so diversity of thought is the absolute game changer for any business industry that wants to do that. You need to bring some different ways of thinking in if you want to go at the sort of pace that we're going to need to go to change industry.
Thank you, Paul. I think that you have started to touch some of the points that I would like to discuss with all three of you. But before that, I don't think I need to do so, but after 2 years. But nevertheless, I think that we are all well acquainted now with the Zoom. And I see that everybody behaves very well. And in fact, everybody is muted. But the thing that I really want to point out, I would like really to have a discussion with the audience as well. So if you have questions, just please feel free to put your questions in the chat box. I will give a look at the chat box while the panel will discuss what the questions, but also if you want to raise your hand and you think that I've not given enough attention to you, just a shout out. We are not so many, so I think we can really do that. So anyway, let me start with the first question. And in a way, Paul, you have a little bit touched on this. Now, chemical engineering, or the chemical industry, really more generally, the chemical engineering, is really going through some unprecedented transition. And now we are really very much into environment and responsible technology. We are really doing a much better job, I suppose, than when I started. Now, my question to Sheena would be, Sheena, how do you think, for instance, that we are really tackling this transition? Do you think that we are doing this well from ED&I point of view? Do you think that we are approaching the technical challenge by including ED&I in what we do? What is your opinion? You can observe us and tell us what we are doing, well or not well.
Thanks, Raffaella. It's a really interesting question. I think there's a global perspective on this as well. How do you explain the energy transition, which we talk about so much in the UK, to a family that have only ever cooked with wood in Asia, don't have electricity? They will not understand when we discuss the energy transition. So we are coming from this from a position of privilege. You know, as Paul mentioned, we have been in a position of privilege within the UK to have this industry, to have energy, and to emit carbon as a byproduct of that. So what we are trying to do now is address some of the challenges and some of the issues that have come from that industrialization. So I think there is a global question around that inclusivity. How do we explain this transition, not just globally, but also how do we explain it to people outside of the sector who don't understand chemicals, who don't understand chemical engineering? There is a language barrier to a lot of what we talk about within the sector, which creates issues. I think if I was trying to explain to my neighbour what the chemical sector was doing to address net zero and reduce its carbon emissions, the language that I used and the way that I talk about it would be very different compared to how we discuss it within the sector. So I think there's some interesting conversations that actually can put inclusivity at the heart of that discussion. I also think in terms of some of the technical challenges, again, this is about us coming from a position of privilege. At the moment, a lot of green products that have maybe biomaterials in or green credentials come at a higher cost than those that don't. And again, that shouldn't be something that we have to choose. It shouldn't be down to an individual or a family to make a choice to buy a more expensive washing powder than another one just because it is greener. So putting that inclusivity at the heart of the design. So when we're designing products and processes for this green transition towards lower carbon products, thinking about the people that are actually going to purchase those products and what it means to them. Because right now people are making those decisions in the UK, not just globally, about the cost of the products that they buy. It shouldn't be a choice. It shouldn't be down to the individual to choose green or not based on cost. So I think that in terms of technical challenges, actually putting that design element at the center of it. What are we trying to do? Can we do it in a cost-effective way that is environmentally friendly and is inclusive to everybody? Will be really important. I'm sure the other panelists have something to add.
Yeah, I don't know if other panelists want to add anything, or indeed from the audience. From my point of view, I think that you have touched on the position of privilege, which is absolutely central. But I think that there is another dimension. It's not just the UK, it's also the international dimension. And that is really an ethical issue more than anything else, because sometimes we are exporting our CO2 emissions somewhere else and bringing back the goods that have been produced by producing CO2 somewhere else. So anyway, so I would like to see for the recent comment on this, and this is also diversity and inclusion, because at that point we are not inclusive in this way, aren't we?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, sorry.
Completely agree. That import-export question around your embedded carbon, where is it going? Where is it produced? How is it happening? And you're right. How we think about that inclusive aspect of it and designing that into processes and the end of life aspect of products is really important.
Okay, I don't know if anyone else wants to comment, otherwise I'll go to the next question. Well, I think that the next question actually goes nicely to, as a consequence of what you have just said, because sometimes we do need regulations, and there are regulations everywhere, and we need policies. But do you think that we need more policy or some very good policies in this area so that we really can promote ED&I? And if it's not regulations, not policy, what else can we do in this area? Probably I would like to ask this question to Paul. Paul.
Okay, thanks a lot. Can I start by saying I think Sheena's spot on, and I think I'm going to frame the answer to this. I think it's really spot on to talk about privilege, because I think one of the considerations when we talk about policy, it becomes quite an animated conversation quite quickly, because those that have privilege, generally human beings don't like to give it up very easily. And I think that's a big consideration of this wider picture. So I was at an event recently, I say recently in the last 3 months, where we were looking at some stats on measures of diversity in engineering, and I think it did move forward by some 2% or 2.2% in the last 2 or 3 years. And there was a general sort of upbeat mood. I couldn't help but stop and think in my head was, if we maintain that rate, then we'll sort of be there in about 40 to 50 years. And so that's glacial pace of change. And I suppose one of the things about this that sharpens the mind is that when you tie the benefits of diversity to the absolute emergency we have, which is the climate, and everything else that has an impact on the planet we live on, then we just don't have time to do that. So in terms of policy, for me, I think it's time to come off the fence on some really tough decisions. We shy away from anything where we invoke positive action. We shy away generally. Some companies are good at it, but from a policy point of view, there's an absolute lack of the kind of targets that would incentivize the behavior that we want to see from companies and individuals. So from policy point of view, I think that's what we need, unless we want to just put up with the 40, 50 year timeline to get where we'd really like to be. I think we need to come off the fence. I think we need to have some things that will not be universally popular. And I don't think there's ever been a better time to do it, because we are literally sort of a crossroads of the existence of humans on this planet. As people remind me, the planet will be fine, but there just won't be any humans on it unless we change things. And I don't think the rate that we've been going since it's been clearly accepted publicly that we're in a state of emergency reflects the level of challenge we've got. So that would be me. I think we need policies. I think we need to incentivize the behavior that we need to change things, and that should come from targets, and they should be policies that flow down to get the outcomes that we really need to change it, and change it at the pace it needs to change.
Yeah, you are right. However, let me do a little bit the devil's advocate now. And of course, I mean, when we speak about diversity, the first thing that comes to mind is gender. But of course, we all know
we lost Raffaella there, and I'm gonna step in probably rudely and imagine what her question might have been. I was trying, I hope, pointedly, you know, want to talk about diversity, to not just talk about gender. It's an easy one in my industry for sure, and we placate ourselves by saying that anything that we do well that improves our gender balance in the industry will generally bring the same opening of way of thinking that will improve diversity across any measure. And you know, again, presupposing Raffaella's kind of point, all measures of diversity, you know, diversity, you know, when you go back to that argument that, you know, diversity brings diversity of thought and all the benefits that come with it, it has to be every measure of diversity, from neurodiversity and every other measure that would want to include. I'm going to pause at that in case we've managed to get Raffaella back.
I think one thing to learn from this is just being careful when you say you want to be the devil's advocate. So hopefully we'll get Raffaella back again.
Oh, good.
It's not Raffaella, as you can see, but while she's sorting her IT out, I'm happy to step in if no one minds. Okay, so I think in terms of the next question we have is, I think it's for you, Ify. In your opinion, what are the reasons for slow changes in the EDI arena?
Well, thank you very much for the question. I'll start from saying that my son, he's an S1. He came back delayed from school and he was asking me between physics, math, chemistry, and biology, what should he be going for? I think I'll pause here because Raffaella is back. Probably she will finish her question, then I can jump in again. Welcome back, Raffaella.
Yes, and you should have seen me screaming in the corridor with my IT people here. But anyway, that's not good. I know, but unbelievable. Sorry, I'm at university. You have better connection. Anyway, just having said that, sorry. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So my son was asking me about, you know, biology, chemistry, physics. Which of these subjects should he go for, or how does he select, or what combination? I was trying to explain to him, you know, the basic things about, okay, physics about the physical, the action that you get from the chemical reactions that must have taken place that gives you that physical outcome. Biology has to do with nature, and then chemistry ultimately has to do with the reactions, the chemistry behind what you're seeing, whether in nature or whether in the physical, in the physics realm. So when I was trying to explain this to him, I found it really interesting how each of these sectors are very much connected. And it was like, okay, that means understanding each of them, really, you need to have a better understanding of the other aspects. And it was, okay, that's very good. So I think this really brings to bear the fact that our world is very much connected. So, and we can't actually live in isolation. Also, another typical example I want to give, because I think this is just a very practical discussion, is that when we traveled to the spaceship company in the US, one of the things that they showed us was the pictures of people who had gone on the trials and how they came back. So when they come back, what they say is that when they went into the space, what they saw was a globe. They saw a world that is very much together, and that really connects with them in terms of the fact that whatever you do in any part of the world really has got an impact in another part of the world. So when you see the world as a globe, it means that nothing is disconnected. We're very much interconnected as beings living in the world. So when we talk about EDI, and what I like about this is that I was actually given the opportunity to say this based on my own opinion. So I'm not really saying something from anybody's opinion. I'm just saying this is what I really believe in. When we talk about EDI, I try to step back from EDI after a lot of experiences I've had in my life to say that we can't really achieve EDI. We can't achieve net zero. We can't achieve, carbon net zero or carbon free on its own, because we whatever we do is very much connected. So what we need to do in most cases when we look at some of these sustainability issues is taking a holistic approach to it. So looking at how do we make the chemical sector more sustainable rather than trying to tackle ED&I specifically, because ED&I, if you try to provide a solution to address ED&I in a solution, the chances is that you will never get to be able to address the problem, because when you fix one problem, then another problem comes out of it. But when you take a system approach to it and say, let's really understand how the chemical sector works, and then how do we try to fix some of the issues we have, then because we're taking a system approach to it, we tend to find a better solution or better solutions to the problem that we have. And because the chemical industry very much relates to virtually every aspect of life, because fundamentally everything is driven by chemical processes, whether in terms of the food we eat, is all you break it down through enzymatic processes where you use secret enzymes to break down the food. So everything we do and everything we use, relies on some form of chemical reaction to take place to give us the output that we want. So it's very difficult to really say this is what is going to work entirely. But for me, looking at sustainability and how we can achieve sustainability, one thing that comes to mind is the fact that every business needs to look into 6 key P's. This include purpose, planet, people, partnerships, peace, and prosperity. Now, I know that this particular circular economy interdisciplinary group do hold a number of webinars, and most of the webinars do have a lot of massive turnout, because most of the time is discussing specific research and project topics. But it's also interesting to see that on a day we're discussing ED&I, the turnout is not that much. You begin to ask yourself question, do people really care? I know that one of the good things about Innovate UK is that at the moment you need to complete an ED&I section when you are completing your application for funding. But another thing is, do people really understand what they're doing? The information they put there, is it basically copy and paste because you need to get the funding? And is any of them actually measured to see how much of that is being delivered? So those are some of the quick, things we can work on to say, okay, if everyone that, secures funding from Innovate UK and put out some ED&I approaches do actually deliver on that, I think we will be going a long way to achieving ED&I in different sectors. Coming to businesses, people, partnership, peace, prosperity, purpose, and planet will be very key for every business to put into consideration in what they do. Why is this important? If we talk about people are will always be at the center of whatever we do as a business. So I'm talking about this, we're in my heart of being the CEO of IntelliDigest, knowing that the people you work with are really important. The people you are producing your products for are really important. The people who are part of your supply chain are also very critical to what you do. So if people are central to everything, how are businesses putting people into consideration in how they run the businesses? Because, chemical industry is driven by businesses, and these businesses are being run by people. So who are these people? What are they thinking? And how do they define their business? And this really brings us to what we call purpose. So every business needs to have a purpose. What are you in this business for? And how is your purpose driving the overall need for us to achieve sustainability or even achieve ED&I within the chemical industry? So if your purpose really resonates and connects with and making the world a better place, then I think there's a lot that will be changed in the way we actually produce, we distribute, and consume chemical produce. So really having the right people with the right mindset and setting up the right purpose for our business. This is very important. I was pleased to be part of the Scottish Government Purpose-Led Business Commission. The report has recently been published, and a follow-up by the Scottish Government on the report has actually been published too recently. It's really important that businesses within the chemical industry and every other industry tap into this reason for businesses to be driven by purpose in what we do, because that will actually help to address so many of the issues we have today across ED&I, across net zero, and the wider challenges that we have in our society. And ultimately, we've touched on planet, you know, the cradle to grave aspect. You know, what do we produce? How do we produce it? And do we actually think ahead about the end of life of those products? What do you want to do with it? Do we have plans on how those products can actually be recovered back and be reused back into the system? Because if we do, then a lot of the exploitation we do with nature wouldn't be taking place, because most of the time we'll find that there's a way to get those things back to use again. So I think, and this comes back again to purpose, to how business leaders are thinking about the future and how we want to deliver the future, because I think business leaders have got a very key role to play in enabling, whether it's ED&I, whether it's net zero, or whether it's achieving the overall sustainability we want to have for the future. So I think there's a lot we can look at within these 6 Ps, but the key things I wanted to touch is the people and the purpose, and then the planet, but also ultimately business needs to be economically viable, which is prosperity, and then it's got partnerships and peace, which is all about looking at what you do, how does it impact the space where you live. So if your business is not thinking about the impact of your business within the society, this is why people can, you know, put out their waste, chemical waste, into the rivers which surround the business premise, because they don't even think about how what they're doing is impacting the society they live in. This is why someone can use a huge amount of pesticides on their farm, because they don't understand that that has got an impact on the ecosystem and the nature around them. And this is why, you know, we can put a lot of fertilizers in the land, just increase yield, without thinking about the eutrophication that takes place in water bodies and how it's destroying our ecosystem. So that's a lot we can do as leaders, business leaders, mostly in the way we define our businesses, whether in the chemical industry and every other industry where we know that fundamentally we use chemicals in different processes and different manufacturing. So I think
it's biodiversity as well, isn't it? So diversity is also about biodiversity. Yes, you are absolutely right. Yes,
it's biodiversity. So that's a different form of diversity, and I'm not sure how it's connected with ED&I, but yeah. So I think I've touched a lot on so many things, and hopefully that gives us a lot of insight. Thank you very much.
I think Jean has his hand up. Jean, please.
Yes, may I chip in here, Raffaella?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
Yes,
we want to have discussion, so please.
Yes, so I think Ify has touched upon a lot of interesting things, and a lot of them kind of resonate so much with what I've been thinking. And I completely agree with you, Ify, about the systems thinking. We shouldn't look at ED&I as a silo. You need to put it in a whole system approach to address the issue as a whole, rather than to individual topic, because they are so interconnected. My question is really, I mean, to you, Ify, but also to other panel members, and also looking at our researchers within the center. I mean, systems thinking to me is a philosophy. So we need to kind of change the way how we address the problems. We used to be engineers or good at technology engineering, but we probably need to look at a wider picture. But to me, it's more than philosophy. You need to have tools. You need to have methodologies to enable you to have a systems thinking, because the chemical systems or chemical manufacturing systems are so complex. So if you just use a philosophy, but you don't have the data analytics, you don't have modeling, you don't have kind of a methodology to underpin your systems thinking, I don't think it will achieve the goal. So if from your point of view, or other panel members, our researchers within our center, or other audience, What do you feel the readiness? Are we ready to kind of take a systems view? Is there any lack of methodologies or tools, or what should we develop as a next step?
Well, thank you so much, Jane, for bringing up that question. So definitely, we don't want system thinking to be something that is more philosophical, but really something that we can start working on and delivering. And ultimately, because this is more of going through a transition where we are trying to ensure that we do it better for the future, and whether it's regarding EDI or to net zero. I think we do not have a silver bullet solution to the whole problem, but I think what we really need is a definite desire to make things work, and having leaders who drive, who have that willingness to ensure that that change can be achieved. And once we have those leaders who are able to drive that change, then you have people who can then work with the leader to make sure that things can start working. And it might go through a bit of iteration where we set up a plan, we set up a methodology to deliver it, which, we fundamentally doing every basic research. We have the hypothesis and say, okay, this is what it is. Let's trial it and see how far we get on and what impact, and then being able to measure and track what we're doing and see how that is delivering the impact we want. After some time, 5 years, we may see that, okay, yeah, this particular aspect is working, but we need to also attend to this aspect. But saying that we need to get everything right from day one may not be feasible. But the good thing is that we have the willingness to make that change and working towards that change. And we know what our final destination point is. So we set that mark to say, this is what we want to achieve in terms of EDI. We want to make sure at least 50% of people working in the chemical sector who are fully engaged in the chemical sector are from diverse background, whether gender or religion or sex or sexuality, whatever it is. We want to have that diverse engagement. We have that target set. We know that this is what we want to achieve in terms of net zero. We know what we want to achieve. So we set those targets, and then we know we're working towards those targets, but we have that willingness. Even the political will also is very essential to make sure that we keep ourselves checked. And like I did mention before, business leaders need to be holding themselves accountable, because if we understand that we have a purpose for what we're doing, and we're doing that in consideration of the impact of what we do on the environment, not just about the economic benefit, I think that will also help us to checkmate a lot of the excesses that we have in our society today, and how many of the things we do have got huge negative impact within the society. So that is a lot that business leaders, political leaders need to do in this area to make sure that we can achieve and the things we've set ourselves to do. But definitely setting a target, measuring that target, tracking that target, and then ensuring that we can iterate when necessary to meet the target is very important.
Absolutely. Actually, I would like to continue what just Jean said, and if you gave a very nice answer about the business aspect of it. But I also believe that this implies also education, and to educate the new kind of engineer, the new kind of technologists, because if we need really much more influx from the social sciences, and we need to have a holistic approach, as well as to embed ED&I in what we do. Probably we need a new kind of engineer, a new kind of technologist. I'm looking at Sheena and Paul. I mean, would you like to elaborate a little bit on this? What's your opinion? I used to say that, the engineer should be like the ancient philosopher who lived in the community and was very much aware of what was going on, not the new engineer who is a little bit was at my time a little bit disconnected. So what's your opinion?
I think you're right, Raffaella. I think we need to look at places we wouldn't necessarily have looked at in the past for our future scientists, our future engineers, because actually that's that, Paul mentioned it, I think that neurodiversity, that diversity of thought, that diversity of experience as well. It's not just about university educated students and PhD students, it's actually about having people who recognize opportunities and go in for them and taking advantage of aspects that maybe we don't see because we are engineers and scientists, and combining that social aspect with economics as well, and the technology and the innovation. There's actually, you might have seen the Innovate UK launched their Young Innovators Award this week, and a whole host of awards have been handed out to young innovators who are developing new technologies, really exciting technologies from different backgrounds in different areas, and actually thinking about some aspects of that and incorporating some of that into our programs and our approaches. And that diversity of thought, I think, will be key to that systems thinking approach as well.
Okay, so thank you. I don't know, I apologize once again for disappearing at one point. And I was, I don't know if you discuss all this, but from my, if you ask a point, if you go ahead.
Yeah, I think I just want to touch on the educational side because
I also Paul, sorry.
Yeah, so okay. So
no, go ahead.
There's a lot that can be done with the future workforce because we try to make a lot of changes the way businesses are going to be delivering what they do in the future, and I think that is not really being communicated to the future workforce to know that you need to adapt differently. You don't need to really live a life the way your parents did it, because they need to go to this 9-to-5 work, and then you have this hybrid flexible working style that you need to engage with. And what is then your responsibility as an employee to really be able to monitor and also track your performance, because you're not always there 9-to-5 like the way others have been monitored in the past, but you live in a different kind of life. So I think there's a lot that the education system could do in terms of really preparing the young ones for the future of work and what that future of work means. But also talking about neurodiversity and the importance of bringing everyone along the line. I think a lot of times we underestimate the potential the young children have, and I think because of the nature of our educational system, most of the children tend to lose their creative capability as they grow over time, because when I engage with a lot of children, they're so creative. They tell you a lot about the things they want to invent, and they tell you about those things in such a very creative way. And imagine if these young people are given the opportunity to even just work on those things, or even just share those ideas with engineers who can then produce it for them. That will further stimulate their thinking and their creativity. But I think we miss all of that, and then we kind of structure them into this learning form where they just need to go and study these subjects and get degrees and certificates, and they just lose that sense of creativity. I'm hoping that the future will be able to support these children, especially those who are really creative, who are very innovative, who want to invent things, who talk about things they want to invent, to be able to do that, and also create that enabling space for them to be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, please.
So, Raffaella, I'd like to play devil's advocate with you in the same way as you said.
You didn't. I think that it was you. No, I'm just. I didn't ask you the question. Anyway, go ahead.
You asked the question. Do we need a new type of engineer? And I'd argue no. I think we need a new leadership. I think we need different leadership and new thinking in leadership. The companies that I see that I visit that have the culture and the leadership that most impresses me are the ones who get the most out of their young engineers, their new engineers that are joining them. And they do so because they don't hold them back, and because they're aligned with what I would say is broadly the thinking in a generation that sits below my old age, which is that they start from a position of live and let live. They start from a position of respect and fairness for all. They have openness to everything from embracing the LGBT community to neurodiversity, and they don't see the world through the same prejudices that unfortunately sit with the majority of our the generation which are leadership just now. Even in terms of the engineering is no different. when we consider, you know, solutions such as hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, they're high pressure gas systems with high voltage DC, you know, battery electric motor systems. Those engineering skills are not different. So, but the attitude and the speed at which we go has always been, I think, industry's responsibility. Academia teaches one to many, and so they must give the technical skills and a flavor of some of the skills, the meta skills that people need. But industry is where they're really shaped. That's where the coaching and mentoring really begins, and it has to be on a one-to-one basis, and that comes from leadership and it filters down from leadership. So no, if there was priority, it wouldn't be a new flavor of engineer, it would be a more consistent flavor of good leadership.
Thank you, Paul, because this is really good, and in a way it takes away from the academics the responsibility, even if I don't think this should be the case. And I think that in any event we should make students more aware of the fact that what they do affects the society, affects the environment, and that's where we have to change our attitude. I think that probably we haven't been so good so far, but I take absolutely your point, and yes, I think that everybody can do well if the leadership is really there and supporting them. However, what I would like to ask to all the panel is that, you know, I'm older than all of you, and I'm a little bit frustrated because, you know, I see that probably I've discussed about this while I was away, but the pace is so slow. I mean, you know, if I look back, I don't see any I don't see the same change like in the technological space in this area in the last 30 years, for instance. So why is that? What should we really be doing at this point to accelerate the pace and to make really the difference? Who wants to take the question? Paul?
So I think it goes back to why are things so slow, and what do you do differently? So I qualify this as that I'd love to test if this was true for the chemical industry, but I genuinely see across general engineering and manufacturing, one of our biggest challenges is that we are a nation of SMEs, and more than often we are the S end, the small end of the SMEs. So I feel that I meet lots of people who are, their head is in exactly the right space. They are genuine supporters, and then the day-to-day chaos, and in a lot of cases it is chaotic, of running a small to medium-sized enterprise takes away their good intentions, and they do have good intentions, and transferring them in. And so something that supports those organizations to be able to turn good intentions into action, I think, is the first thing. And that's the bit where I'd be kind. The other one, though, is to be on the less kind side, is I think we have a situation now where a number of organizations and leaders have realized that it is something that they have to be correct about, but they are not, the walk is not following the talk. And what we do about that is a tougher one, because we have, you know, people in leadership positions who are saying all the right things and going to the right training and getting their staff to do the same, but they are not actually they're not taking action which moves the needle in the right direction. So I think those are two ends of the challenge, that, you know, one is willing, but they need some help, and the other is doing a nice job of covering up their real intentions, and that needs to be unlocked and move forward.
Thank you, Paul. And Gina's is hand up, and also Peter. So if you can be fast, that I give the opportunity also to Peter to speak, because it's nice to have a discussion.
Yeah, sure. So I will leave the opportunity to Peter. Just want to say, Raffaella, while you're away, I think Ify has touched base the question already, but I think it's a really good kind of starting point to discuss. But I will just leave the opportunity to Peter now.
Peter, please go ahead. Apologies for
You're very generous, and thank you, Raffaella. I agree with Paul, the leadership is the problem. And just to give you a very specific example, I'm not going to name names, but I was talking to a former MP from the coalition Conservative Party. The reason we're not making change is the government have gone, in terms of net zero, they've made decisions that they're embarrassed to change. So they have stuck with policies for net zero, which will never work. But they're unwilling to change that policy to save face. And that's why we do need a change of leadership.
Thank you, Peter. That's interesting. I'm aware of the time, but I think that, I want just to probably prompt the last question to everybody. Specifically, I would like also to give the opportunity to Sheena to say something on this. And I'll tell you what I have in mind. If we very nicely put the thing that sometimes we tick the box, and this is not something that we should do. However, here we have an UKRI interdisciplinary center for circular economy. I'm sure that Jim was asked how he was going to include ED&I in his center. What do you think we can advise and help and enhance Jim's work? And what is your advice to somebody who has such a big opportunity and such an excellent opportunity to change this arena? So I will go in turn to all the panelists. Who wants to start?
I don't mind starting. I have two comments. One is a bigger picture piece, and then one is a very personal one. I think actually could be helpful. In terms of what the centre can do, I think this outreach into other disciplines, explaining the language and including a wider range of people within the centre than we would necessarily normally do. So actually going to some of the unexpected departments or universities or locations might be helpful. From a very personal perspective, I've just come back from maternity leave, and this I think is true of any extended leave, sick leave, parental leave, bereavement leave. Coming back into a work environment is very challenging, and actually people don't necessarily talk about it very openly. So if you have colleagues who are coming back from sick leave, coming back from maternity leave or paternity leave, which I think is also very important and should be seen more, ask them how they're doing. And it's just a very personal thing, a very simple thing, but it will make such a big difference and really open up and make the environment feel more inclusive, and you might learn something new. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And if you have 2 minutes, so that I give also to Paul the opportunity to comment on this, please. 2 minutes.
Well, thank you very much. And considering this, it's been delivered by Innovate UK funded project, it's really great to see that Innovate UK is prioritizing EDI as, for every organization that participate or apply for funding, they will need to complete the EDI section. I think the key thing is really working out how that is monitored and what compliance is expected. How do the monitoring officers do their reports on those aspects of what is being included in the EDI, or is it purely focused on the project outline? So trying to ensure that people can report on these things will be quite useful for the future. And on a general term, I think it's just having it's just every one of us having an open mind to engagement, and EDI will be quite very straightforward to address if we have an open mind to engagement and knowing that everyone has got a great potential, and if they have the right enabling environment, they can actually excel as individuals. So if we have that mindset, then it's easier to engage with people. And also if we don't have these, system where there is stiff competition, where companies need to be overdue or have, higher reports, especially economic reports of the deliverables, then you have a more relaxed environment where people are more in tune to take risk and really accommodate other people and provide that environment for other people to excel. So I think for every one of us, when we have the opportunity to contribute to global discussions, it's all about how do we ensure that we can step back from the society of trying to undo or overdo others, or companies trying to have the highest revenue or highest profit, but more of looking into reporting also sustainability attainments such as ED&I and other aspects, because once we bring those things to play, then some of the struggles, competitions we have today, we can start tuning them down. People can start relaxing and knowing that it's not just about that economic value, but the wider impact we deliver as businesses, as organizations, and as societies. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ify. And Paul, finally to you.
So yeah, for the centre, I think its priority has to be to lead from the front. I think they have to lead from the front, and they have to set an example wherever they can. And so it should be a filter that everything goes through. And then the next thing it needs to do is, when they do that, is they need to speak up, and they need to be vocal in celebrating it and reminding people in the industry why they're doing it. And I think the last thing is, groups and centres like this, they sit in a privileged position where they can often say things on behalf of industry that industry individually can't say. So they need to act as a critical friend to their own industry. And the friend bit's really important, but the critical bit's too. And it goes hand in hand with that speak up and call things out and set the bar high for everybody, and be a persistent drumbeat that keeps coming back, saying the same thing again and again. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think that we have 1 minute left. I don't see any other hands up, and we are starting to lose some of the attendees because I think they have other commitments. But let me take the last minute just to thank everybody. Of course, to the organizer, to Jean and Smita, and all the people that have been supporting us in this, because without you, we couldn't have done anything. So thank you very much for the opportunity also to discuss such an important issue. And I have to say that I really would like to thank the panelists, because they have been really thought-provoking. They have been really giving me some nice ideas. I've taken notes, but also I believe that, I was a little bit pessimistic. Yes, it's true that the pace has been really slow, but I think that it's good that we have discussions like this, and we are really very much committed to make the change, and I'm sure that we will make it, and the pace will be much faster from now on. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you soon, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.